7 o'clock, and we're going to call the August 6th meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission to order. If the administrator would call the roll.
Anderson?
Here.
Bagelman?
Here.
Dane?
Here.
Frankie? Huser?
Here.
Olson?
Here.
Payne?
Here.
Solheim?
Here.
Wilson?
Okay, the agenda is before you. Are there any additions, corrections?
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Those opposed, no. And the motion is carried. The minutes were sent out to you, and you've had a chance to take a look at them. Are there any additions, corrections to the minutes?
I think under B1, the public hearing piece there, there's reference to Rick Coleman, and I believe it's Corey Coleman.
We're talking about on the agenda?
No, minutes.
Oh, minutes, rather, yeah.
I know Rick was present and Corey was the applicant. And I know Rick
Okay.
was the father and Corey was the son.
Bruce is the father.
Bruce.
Bruce. So it should be Bruce then.
Well, I don't know who
I'll double
represented, but it's going to be either Bruce or Corey.
Thank you very much for that. Sorry about that.
Very good. Are there any other additions, corrections?
Move approval with that correction.
We got a motion and a second. Hearing no other discussion, those in favor vote yes.
Yes.
Those opposed, no. And the motion is carried. The minutes are approved. Communications, Ben?
You have the Board of Adjustment minutes from July 13, I believe, in your packet there, just to review. It was for a detached accessory building on 12th Street Southeast. It was ultimately denied, and you can see kind of the discussion that happened with that one.
Had to do with the establishment of hardship?
Correct.
Okay. Anything else? Good? Okay, tonight we have two public hearings that are scheduled. The first of those is a public hearing on rezoning request from C3 to R4 for 314 First Avenue Southeast. Coleman Real Estate Investment Property, LLC, is requesting a zoning change for property located on the south side of First Avenue Southeast in the 300 block. The request is to change the existing C3 commercial district zoning to R4 multiple family residential transition district, zoning to reflect the actual usage of the property. Comprehensive land use map designates the property as residential. Following public notice through mailings to those within 250 feet and posting in the local newspaper at least 1 week in advance, the Commission will consider all public comment prior to recommending action to the City Council. Ben, do you have any correspondence on this or any communication?
I have not received anything in writing nor any phone calls on this one.
Okay, we'll open then the public hearing, and is there anyone from the audience that wants to speak to this question? Hearing none, the public hearing is closed, and let's have some discussion within the commission.
I move that the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend approval of the zoning change for 314 First Avenue Southeast from C3 to R4.
Do we have a motion?
I'll second.
Okay, is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The motion is carried, and it'll be forwarded to City Council. Next item is item B2, public hearing on rezoning request from R1 to R2 and to amend the comprehensive land use plan from public to residential for a property located at 101 30th Street Southeast. That is a correction from maybe the printed copy you have. Seth Engelbrecht, applicant and property owner, is requesting the rezoning of one lot located on the southeast corner of 30th Street Southeast and East Bremer Avenue. The request is to change the zoning designation from R1, single-family residential, to R2, 1 and 2 family residential, and will allow for duplex development on the subject property. The comprehensive land use map designates the property as public. Staff is requesting the commission amend the comprehensive land use map from public use to residential use to better reflect this privately owned property. Following public notice through mailings to those within 250 feet and posting in the local newspaper at least 1 week in advance, the commission will consider all public comment prior to recommending action to the city council. Ben, any correspondence on this?
I did have a visit from a resident. They didn't give their name, but they just had some questions about it and just relayed that we would have a public hearing tonight.
Okay. Anything beyond that?
No real comments for or against it. Just
So
curious on the request. Yeah.
let's open the public hearing. Is there anyone present who would like to speak to this particular question? Please come up. The microphone is to your left, and if you would speak into the microphone, give your name and your community and
Just name and address for the record.
John, the mic is still to your left.
Thank you.
There you go. Thank you.
John Mullis, 109 30th Street, next door. And the property has always been R1. And as the neighbors got together, with probably more to speak, we think that would devalue the property. And personally, R1 would be great. And with an R2 with multi-dwelling, I just got a letter this spring that I had to furnish a parking space, and other than on grass, on my property in town, one for each bedroom, where they can put them all. So, and it has been taken care of very well since I quit mowing it. I think R1 would be a single dwelling. They would maybe have to take care of it. And R2, the landlord would probably have to take care of it. And I have questions about that. So I guess that's my biggest question.
Okay, thank you. About other comments from anyone who's present? Please come on up to the microphone, your name and your address, please.
Jim Mayman at 303 30th Street Southeast. It has been R1 for 28 years that we've lived there. And I would not want to see a change in this, basically because all my neighbors feel the same way. I'm here just to back each and every one of those up. And I consider this maybe a little spot zoning. I've been told it isn't, but I can't see any other way out than to see it that way. And I would definitely ask you to consider the homeowners there, what it will do to us, and that I would ask you folks to reject this proposal tonight. And if I can think of anything else to say, I might step up here again.
You'd be welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. How about other folks?
I'm Russ Bruns, 607 30th Street Southeast, and I just got one question in mind. Is there room for a double one? We're all supposed to stay about 100 foot back off of 30th Street. How far are we supposed to stay away from the highway? I mean, the city sets up these rules, and then what happens? That's my main concern, because there's a lot of stuff comes around that corner. It's a miracle it makes it. But they've told me that I had to be 100 foot back, even with my house.
We're talking about 100 feet from
Off of 30th Street.
Okay.
So it doesn't leave a lot of room there. I can see R1 going in, but where are we going to park from there? Thank you.
Thank you. Other people who are with us tonight, please. Excuse me. I'm going to call on him because what we like to do is to give everyone an opportunity, and then we can come back for round two as you see fit. Yes, sir.
My name's Gary Gertz. I'm here on behalf of Athena Secchi at 207 30th Street Southeast. I got one question and then a comment. What can be built on this other, if you zone it R2, what else can be built on this other than a multifamily house residence? And how many is multi? Is it two or is it quite a few? Just two. And is that the only thing that can be built on this property if it's zoned R2?
Correct. Yep.
Okay. Thank you. I don't have a second question then.
Okay. Anyone else? Let's come back to you, sir.
When we built our home in 1957, I might be corrected by my wife, I don't know. But anyway, at that time, we were required from the property line to have our house set back 75 feet. And as near as I can tell, there isn't much room left to build a duplex with the property that's left. Those lots from the center of the road measure 230 feet. So consider that.
Ben, just for the record, I'm showing on our drawing that the depth on these lots is 200 feet.
Yeah, that's what it looks like. And it looks like, too, I don't know, in 57, was that in the county or the city limits?
County.
That was county. You probably had a well and septic? Yes. Okay. And I know with those setbacks, I mean, that's a great setback. I mean, that's a lot. In the city limits, for this zoning for R1 or R2, it's a 25-foot from the property line or the right-of-way that you would be allowed to be up against the right-of-way line. And right-of-way line is usually 12, 16 feet from the edge of the 30th Street there. So 12, 16 feet back, and then an additional 25 feet would be what we would require. To give you an illustration. Well, from the highway, I mean, it's kind of hard to explain because there is extra right-of-way because it's a state highway and it actually goes beyond a great distance. But it'd be a 25-foot setback from the right-of-way point from the highway as well. So I couldn't tell you from the edge of pavement without measuring it, but we would double-check that at the time because it is a corner lot. It has two front setbacks. So it'd be up to the applicant to demonstrate that a house would indeed fit there. And I've encouraged them to do that as part of this application too. If they are thinking duplex, I think they were trying to keep the options open. But I haven't seen a site sketch or anything like that showing anything fitting there. So if it doesn't fit, we couldn't allow it. But if it would fit, we could permit it. So right now they're asking for just the zoning change, not necessarily, you know.
Yeah, I understand that, but we don't want that. That's why we're here.
Very good.
Could I say one more thing?
It's up to the chair.
You're waiting on him?
Take this gentleman next, and then you can come back around. We'll try to keep the order.
I'm
Yes,
the
sir.
quiet one out of the group, by the way. Anyway, I'm the young guy in the neighborhood.
And does the young guy have a name?
My name's Randy Suits.
Thank you.
And I live at 201 30th Street, which would be two properties away. And me and my wife are opposed to changing this from R1 to an R2. And we're not worried about having progress in our neighborhood. We're just worried about how that's going to fit. And like you said, my question was off the DOT. There's nobody here from the DOT to say how far from the highway that needs to be. That was my question: is how far is that supposed to be? Because that's going to be pretty tight as far as that lot. And if you guys want to go out there, if you guys, any of you seen the lot? Have you seen the lot? Have you seen how high the grass is? Yeah. So what's to say, this guy's not going to take care of his yard? So I'm really opposed to that too, so.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
We were talking about setbacks, and I mentioned the 75 feet. I think anything built along that road now, all those lots are filled from the trail to the highway. They should stay consistent with setbacks as they are now, instead of having one house 50 feet closer to 30th Street Southeast.
Thank you. Anyone else? Pick here. I saw you first, and then John will pick you up.
The other comment I was supposed to make for Athena Secchi is that she is opposed to having it changed to R1. I feel it necessary, or R2, excuse me.
Right.
I feel it's necessary for each one of the homeowners to express their concerns, not just tell you what it is, but to tell you that they do not want it. So on behalf of her, I am saying that she does not want it rezoned.
John?
People probably already know the accident that happened on my property a few years ago. And I've got a question. They told me that for every foot deep, they have to go a foot wide when they dig holes. Did anybody take into consideration where the sewer line is and that it's 32 feet deep past them lots? They have to ever dig one up? So.
Okay, explain that. Could you explain that again? I don't quite understand what you mean.
And are you referring to when they go to build a home, they'll have to expose the sewer line, and then they'll have to dig out and up?
Not along that side, but
Okay.
behind us. Whoops, I'm sorry. But the lot does an L shape on that lot. This main sewer line does, and they told me when they dug it at my place, it's 32 feet deep. And we don't need more accidents out there. I bawled for months. If that makes any difference.
Then just for clarification, I'm missing the L shape.
Are you referring to the L shape of the trunk of the sewer line itself?
The main sewer line comes along the highway, makes 90 degrees behind our lots.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and then it heads southbound then along those lots. Okay, thank you. Does that help clarify it?
Yep.
Okay.
Any other comments from anyone in the audience?
So there's the property question.
Okay, the way our procedure works, we'll close the public hearing, and then the commission will be talking. They may have a question for you, but the public hearing will be over. So just so you have a sense, is there anyone else that wants to make a comment from the audience? Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing, and we'll have discussion among the commission members.
I guess the question I have is, if whatever the duplex is that would be designed to fit in that space, if it fit and met all the setbacks and requirements, is there a problem? On the part of the, if all of those details were met, is there objection to it?
Well, it would have different setback requirements than the property going south on 30th Street.
So
it would look different on the property than the other houses do.
So I'll just chime in as staff and looking at this. They are correct. The homes that front along 30th Street, when you draw, I'm able to look on Bremer County's assessor page here, and I'm using a measure tool. And it does look like there's a 75-foot setback approximately from the right-of-way line of 30th Street for almost all those homes. So imagine any new duplex could be permitted to be about 50 feet closer to the roadway and meet our minimum requirement, because now it's within the city jurisdiction with an R1 request or an R2. So that's applicable. And then it would have a 30-foot rear yard setback, and then it'd have a 10-foot side yard setback.
And what you're saying is if somebody who has a home right now in one of those other lots tore down and rebuilt, they could move their house 50 feet up too.
Correct. That would be the minimum. They can
Because
certainly put it in the same footprint, but we require a
When they
minimum of
built,
25.
it was part of the county, now it's part of the city, so the
That's
requirements are different. So any of these existing homeowners have the right to either do an addition on, they could even do an addition forward on their house too, and come forward if they wanted to, right?
Wherever that is, please take care of it.
Ben, I'm assuming with your tool there, looking at the aerial, the beacon aerial, it appears to me that the property due east is, I'm assuming, appropriately distanced from the road, and there's plenty of room for that duplex or for any building within that lot to be an appropriate setback, the way I look at the aerial.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So, for example, when you take off the 25-foot setback from the north right-of-way, and then you remove the 10-foot setback from what I call the south property line or the side property line if you're facing to the west there on 30th Street, you would be left with roughly about 75 feet of a length of a home, duplex or single family, whatever configuration the structure, 75 feet wide as an example, that one could locate there and be within the setback requirements. So again, that'd be elongated north-south, 75 feet long in length, and facing 30th Street.
What kind of a width footprint?
The width, we require a minimum 24 feet wide for any new residence.
There's plenty of space there for that.
There is plenty of space for that, yes.
And the sidebar is what, 10 feet?
The side is 10, yes.
And the rear?
A rear would be 30.
So that would describe the maximum footprint that could be put in there for the two buildings. For the building that's a duplex.
If they faced it west.
Yeah, which is the front?
They could face it north, couldn't they?
When you ask which way is the front, that would dictate the rear setback of 30 feet. So if they make the architectural front door on the west, and we address it as such that way because of that, then the rear yard setback would be enforced on the east property line.
So it's really based on the front door?
The architectural front of the structure, yes. And then we would...
Address?
Well, we based address on where they're locating their front door. Typically, that's how we like to do it.
But they could face it north.
If they face it north, then we'd enforce a rear setback of 30 feet from the south property line.
But if they did that, would it meet the width requirements of the structure?
Yes.
And if it faced north, would the driveways be in the front?
So you'd have 55 feet of width from the Highway 3 right-of-way south, 55. So we subtract the 25 from the right-of-way required front yard. Then you'd have 55 feet of allowable width. And then you'd still meet the 30-foot setback from the south if they face it to the north. And they access it from, probably 30th Street, and they wind around and do kind of like a little service road configuration.
Do duplexes in an R2 require one parking space, paved parking space?
A duplex structure, it would be for each would be a single-family residence, is how we would look at it, and as such, it needs two minimum off-street, just two.
For each?
For each unit.
So 4 parking spaces.
4, And you can include enclosed attached garage area as a parking space. You can do that to meet minimum standards.
Aren't we basing that on the assumption that it's a two-bedroom duplex?
Well, with a single-family residence, irregardless of how many bedrooms, you're just required to 2 minimum.
So if it has 12 bedrooms, you only need 2?
Right. If it's a rental property, then we say you need to do basically it's you can have occupants up to the number of bedrooms plus 1, and we would say you need to accommodate the parking in some fashion so that the maximum allowed off-street is 4, with the intention of not overpowering the property with a parking lot, but you want to say, fit in with the scale of the neighborhood. We don't want the whole property to be a parking lot, but 4 total.
Other questions, comments from the commission?
I guess I have a question, which is, why hasn't anybody built a single-family house there? I mean,
It's fine. If you're asking the question, please.
it's just a general question, whomever, I guess.
That's
Well, originally, the first house built out there was built on that lot.
Where'd it
The
go?
State Department, DOT, purchased that lot with intentions of doing something with the highway, whatever that was. So that house was removed, and there was a house there originally.
Thank you.
I was just going to say, I guess for me personally, there's a lot of unanswered questions. So it'd be nice if we could see a site plan of where they're going to propose to put this duplex. I mean, which way is it going to face? And until we see that, I guess I would have a hard time voting to amend the comp plan and then change the zoning without seeing that first.
Or another thought would be maybe make it as a condition that the home face to the west only. I don't know what, is that a concern of yours, or?
Well, I just think, we haven't really heard from the property owner, so it makes it a little bit challenging to, when there's already opposition. I think there could be some comfort maybe brought to this if there was something more visual to the people in the neighborhood.
If it was a duplex facing west, where's the second door? The second entrance to the unit.
Sometimes they're side by side, like over by the pool. There's some where the front doors are right next to each other. So I think it just depends upon the.
Okay, so it'd be 2 long units.
Just going back a few months ago, didn't we rezone part of this area? Like, is it the R4 and R2?
No, we went
Or-
commercial behind it. At that time, I suggested that it be R2, so there was a buffer between the commercial, but we went with all commercial.
So the C2 area is what we rezoned. Okay, I just remember working in this area before and trying to remember back to that.
I think one of the challenges here for the neighborhood is that whether it's a duplex or whether it's a single family, they don't have to be back 75 feet. And it's going to potentially change the whole appearance, but there's nothing we can do about it. That is the code, and I don't believe we should rewrite the code for one house. But whether it's duplex or whether it's individual single-family home, potentially it can be quite different in the neighborhood. And that's not a bad thing. That's just the way the code is.
Ben, wasn't there something we did a number of years ago that you couldn't have, if you had a street and you couldn't have a house that sits out ahead of, and they couldn't add something onto the front side of the house that would stick out beyond the, it's probably before your time, but I think there was something that we put in there because we didn't want to ruin the neighborhood, and somebody wanted to add something onto the front side of their house. It still met the setback, but it took away from the line. I don't remember, it's been a number of years ago, but there was something that we put in at that time that we didn't want, because the character, that it was going to affect the character of the neighborhood or the street.
Wasn't it a porch?
Well, I don't, maybe it was you, or you, and
I think so.
there was something we put in at that time that.
Is it about enclosing an open porch to a closed porch? We had
No,
something
it was,
about that.
we just didn't want to, something that was going to take away from the line of sight or change the character, but there was something that.
Had to do with the aesthetic of the neighborhood.
The street and the neighborhood, but
Are we for certain that this was all county regulation back in the day when this was developed, or could there have been a neighborhood covenant that would have said you must have your house set back that far? Have we researched it?
Oh, that part I don't, I mean, I know that it was county at that time,
Yeah.
but I
I
don't know
don't
if
know
there
how
was
that
covenants.
works with covenants versus zoning. And if there's a covenant there of that neighborhood, I have no idea, but that's what I would have assumed. I didn't think that it would have been county.
I think covenants only go for a maximum of 20 years unless they're renewed.
Okay. Oh, I didn't realize that.
It's 20 or 25 unless they're renewed, and obviously,
These are older.
if I could ask, does anyone know, is there a active homeowners association out there? I think if there were.
It would be, yep, okay.
I got a question. The land right.
Sir, if you want to have a question, I will acknowledge you. Please come to the microphone, give your name, your address.
Okay, Wayne Nolte, 203 30th Street Southeast. The land right east of that lot, is that zone commercial then?
Yes.
Yes?
Yep, it was
So
rezoned commercial.
is there anything talked about that going in there?
Well, that's actually a part of our discussion on the agenda later.
Oh,
There's
okay.
a subdivision request for that area, a commercial subdivision. It'd be later in the agenda after this item.
All right, that's all.
I would have a question for you about that point. We rezoned a commercial a number of months back, and the entire community, our neighborhood would have been informed, and we didn't hear anything from any of you. Do you recall that? I'm a little surprised that an R1, R2 brings out so many people when going from ag to commercial didn't.
I don't really remember, but I just remember there was some red flags, brought out there so far down, and then there was corn went up south of there, and then hay. So I knew something was happening, but I didn't know for sure what.
Okay, thank you.
That's
As
all.
a matter of fact, we did, and it was several months ago, and I think we moved it on the calendar in order to accommodate your schedule, sir. And John did in fact appear before the group.
Maybe I missed that. Okay.
Could have, but it's probably four months ago or so. April?
Okay.
March.
Do you have a question about the commercial designation? Or?
Well, I just wondered what was going in there, though.
Oh, okay.
Ben, a question, in view of Bill's question, do we have any sense about what's intended?
I haven't seen any site plan to date on this. I've encouraged the applicant to kind of think about mapping it out, how a residence could fit on there. They're fully aware of that, for it to make sense, they're aware of the setback requirements, but I have yet to see a site plan. And frankly, they're not required to, although it does help illustrate how something could work on the property. Although with a rezoning request to say, we want the ability for the option to put in a duplex versus single family, but they don't gain anything if they still do a single family. So frankly, they'll have to look at it and try to make it work. If they can't make it work, they'll be stuck with a single family residence. But so again, with the request, it's kind of the sense of, is there an orientation that's preferred by the commission? Kind of from what we're hearing, is there a concern about a setback from the right-of-way, which maybe we've heard, and that's kind of why we have these meetings too, is for that stuff to come out and be reflected in the minutes when it goes to council.
Thought it was. This reminds me of Second Avenue when near the High Point, the duplexes that were being proposed there, and it was a good time for the neighborhood to kind of see what the rooftops were going to look like. And I thought, it was a good result coming from that, and it's hard when you don't see things. And so that's kind of the reason I brought it up. It was a good project, obviously, when that project came forward.
The significant difference between what could be built there with the two different zoning designations is the size of the structure, potentially, although you could build a big house to a single-family house. The number of parking spaces is likely to be more. And that's the parking spaces is the big difference, right?
Yeah, I mean,
in terms of the size of a structure that could go there.
well, you just need 2 spaces off street for each unit, each single family dwelling. So an example of this would be closer to 12th Street, northeast on Bremer Avenue. There is some condos there. There's a grouping of like 3 or 4 condos fronting onto Bremer Avenue there, kind of across north of Terex. So if you're going down Bremer Avenue, that's an example of a duplex style. So that's one example that comes to mind.
Those are 2 stories side by side.
I think they're well, there might be, there's a couple single story, but there are a couple 2-story, right?
These are the steer.
Yes. I believe he's the owner, or the company's the owner.
As far as the parking, I think for clarification, in a duplex, if you have one garaged and one pad spot, that's your 2. So it's not like they have to pour the whole place full of concrete.
That's correct. That's how I would look at it. They're meeting the minimum of 2 off-street spaces with that scenario.
Just in the interest of being as thorough as we can. John, come on up. You've got something you want to say, and I think this gentleman does, that kind of dances on the line, but we'd like to hear what you have to say.
On this parking, I got a letter early this spring that I had to have off-road or off-street parking for my rental property for every bedroom. Has that changed?
No. How many bedrooms did you have?
3.
So, right. If you have 3 bedrooms in a rental situation, you need 3 off-street spaces.
And if I had 4 bedrooms?
You'd require 4. And then if you had 5, we would require a maximum of 4. Anything above and beyond 4. Just we cap it at 4.
Is that any different for this place?
It is different, yes.
Why?
Because we adopted the ordinance rules to say a rental property shall be treated differently, and therefore, if it's rented out, it needs to have those minimum spaces prescribed.
Is this going to be sold or rented?
That would depend on the owner to tell us how it's going to be used.
Well, you should make sure you do that,
We will.
because I don't want cars all over beside me.
Okay.
But in that case, Ben, if it's a rental, does a single car garage count as 1 and the pad counts as 1?
Right.
So if it's 2-bedroom, it's got 2 spots. It works as a rental or not.
Yeah. Right.
Because they already have enough, because it's 2 bedrooms.
If it was 3 bedrooms, you'd have your single garage
And then
plus
2
a pad
spots.
plus 1 other
Right.
spot required.
Right.
Okay. And this gentleman here, wanted a moment.
You were talking about this commercial property behind it that was rezoned. Actually, I'll tell you what date it was, March 5th, 2015. I understand you said there was nobody here at that hearing, but understand...
Actually, sir, if that's the date, I apologize.
He wasn't.
I left early because I was not feeling well at the March 5th meeting.
But you said there was nobody in the audience.
I did not recall it. I
Okay.
apologize.
Okay, I'm sorry.
And I clarify.
Okay, well, I do know there was one for sure.
I apologize.
There was.
And believe me, I would have been here. But my wife took me to Florida that year. I mean, it was tough decision. I'm probably shooting myself down here. Do you folks ever consider what the feelings are of the people living there?
I think
Or is
you're
it
getting,
strictly
sir,
business?
Sir, I'm going to interrupt you. I think you're getting a very full ration of the fact that we do, because we have loosened the normal procedure for a public hearing in order to accommodate those kind of feelings. So please, don't go there.
Okay, I will stop right there then. I had my chance, but, well, I won't even say that. Thank you.
Yes, sir. One more.
As I've said earlier, just speaking for my daughter, not living there, but listening to these folks, it sounds like there's a couple things besides getting a blueprint of what they're going to do. If you would make the house or duplex face to the west, make that a variance. I believe you guys can do that to some property. And the second thing would be have it 75 feet, the same as what the other houses on that street were. Grandfather clause, I'm not sure how this works into all of that property, but I know the grandfather clause could be put in there in a state like this, because if they were all required at that time, now just because it's town, city, instead of county, it probably still should apply. And I think that's something that might make your guys' job easier if you apply those two rules to your, three rules. Get a blueprint of the house, have the house face west or duplex, and have it back 75 feet. Because if they can move it 50 feet closer, imagine living next door to that and seeing nothing but building towards the highway. Or even the next two houses would see nothing but building. That might make your job easier. Thank you.
Okay, let's come back to the commission. What other comments do we have here?
Tonight, I'm conflicted, because as everyone knows, I'm a believer that the property owner, as long as they're not doing something detrimental to the neighbors, should be able to do pretty much what they want with the property. However, this is not a spot zone, but a change in zoning requested by that does have impact on the neighbors. The lot is large enough, whatever type of building we want to put on there, it'll fit, it'll work, and that's really not the problem. The problem is, do we want to inflict a significant change upon the people, and that's where my concerns are. I think that it's not spot zoning. It's clearly a residential lot, and the fact that they can move it within 25 foot of the road regardless of duplex or A1 or A2 doesn't, R1 or R2, is really immaterial. Dave's done some thinking here, and there's ways you can shield it, but I personally don't want to get into the business of reviewing people's building plans. I think that's an overreach of the commission to say we want to see your building proposal. So I still sit here well conflicted, not sure which way I'll go.
Is there anything from precedent from other times when the zoning has changed from R1 to R2 or whatever, the changes that would influence this decision?
Other than the one that Dave identified, I don't remember any.
I mean, it was kind of illustrated earlier and hinted at that a site plan could certainly help illustrate what the dynamics could be and showing how something could work on a property, and that's to the benefit, I think, of an applicant or, frankly, to make a case one way or the other how it could or could not work. But in this case, kind of like Rich was pointing out, we don't require that at this point. It's really under the purview of the commission, kind of your thoughts after hearing the statements that are made. Does it change the dynamic of the neighborhood? Kind of a mental checklist. Does it impact traffic flow in the area with an increase in density of housing, 1 versus 2? How it works on the corner there. All things to think about, kind of in the sense of, I call it the human scale. You're driving your car into the property. Any thoughts, concerns, visibility, parking off street? Is there a concern there? Is there enough space for off-street parking? That's, in my opinion, what you should do as a commissioner, is to use that checklist and go through that list. So I think, for the long-winded answer to your simple question, Kathy, I think you just have to address it as best you can. And if you think it warrants a condition of approval, that's certainly under the purview of the commission to entertain as a motion and then vote it as such. So,
I personally am with Rich on this in terms of not wanting to review site plans. I think that has the potential to become very emotionally fraught.
Sure seems like we review site plans, though, for commercial development all the time, to see how it configures on a lot, to make sure the parking works, to make sure the
Is it
safety.
different because it's commercial versus residential?
I don't know, because this is on a commercial corridor. I think it's helpful to kind of understand it. Which way is it going to face? You know, and you start to look at the safety and where the driveways are going to come in and all those type of things. So that's where I think it's probably would be a little helpful to understand. Otherwise, it's speculation.
Well, I can just tell you about, just on that one note I heard, driveways are going to have to come in off 30th Street. The
It has
DOT
to?
is not going to permit anything off Bremer Avenue. This
It looks
close to
like
the
there's a
intersection.
curb cut there now.
There's an existing older drive, which I assume
that
is from the
original
older
house.
home that used to be there. And that's the one we would let them use. The DOT, I'll
would
just
not
be
allow
upfront,
it.
they won't allow it on Bremer Avenue that close to the intersection. They'll just say, you got to use what you got.
Let me ask this. So on the other side of the road, what's the future land use where it's all A1 today? Is that, how do we have that designated?
To the west,
To the west, yeah.
I think just residential. Do we color it residential?
I think it's residential.
I'll look at the map in your packet here. It shows it as residential
Okay.
to the west, all of it, yep.
And abutting Highway 3 there?
Abutting Highway 3, we showed as a mixed use,
Okay.
residential/commercial, or a blend of the two.
Can I comment? You're talking about the driveway, if it's coming off of 30th? If you ever
Driveway,
notice,
Sir, the driveway is not coming off 30th.
Yeah.
It is coming off
Okay.
30th, not
Okay.
off, not
I thought I was
off
at a
30th.
different meeting. Anyway, if you ever notice people taking that curve to go on to 30th, going 45 miles an hour, it's pretty quick. You come to that driveway. So I'm just saying, safety-wise, people are barreling right off that going south, and there's barely enough room for anybody to slow down. So, because they're taking it pretty quick. So that driveway is going to be right there. So I'm just talking about safety reasons. That's it.
When we put this thing all together, Ben, if we vote yes, it means that the person who's made the petition can either put in a single-family dwelling or a duplex.
Correct.
If we vote no, and they want to still take it forward, they can still take it forward to city council and have city council overturn the recommendation that we would make.
With a
What are the other-
supermajority.
huh?
With a supermajority, though.
Yeah,
It would take
that's
a-
correct.
it
It
would-
would take a
would take a
supermajority if the
supermajority.
recommendation is denial from the commission.
Okay. What other alternatives do you see that are in there?
Another alternative that we could do, I'm just thinking through this whole process. We could restrict the setback to stay in line with the other setbacks as part of the, to changing that to an R2. So it would have to have whatever, 75 foot, and requirement that it has to be a setback so it doesn't conflict with the natural setback that goes all the way down there. There's a lot of places in this community where you got single-family residences next to duplexes. That's, that's scattered throughout the community now. They're in R2s, but there's a lot of R2 that has a lot of single-family. But we could restrict that. I'm pretty sure of that because I think we've done it before.
Well, we can do what we call as kind of a zoning agreement to say it's more restrictive than we normally allow, but if they're okay with it, this is what our commission is recommending for approval. And then before we go to council and set the public hearing, if they can agree to that, then so be it. Otherwise, the council can hear the argument being made and decide, is that a condition they agree with? And they say, we're not going to entertain this unless this comes back with this condition. So then the pressure's on the applicant. So I think that if you're thinking that, I think that's allowable. You can do that and recommend that in your motion.
May I ask something about that?
Please.
Just in terms of process, if the Planning and Zoning Commission could certainly recommend that and pass that on, but there is nothing, I don't think, is there that would actually would allow City Council to actually, without an agreement from the property owner, would actually require them to do that. Is that correct? Because it's more restrictive. I mean,
That's the way I understand the law.
Yeah.
So if the applicant would be agreeable to that, I think that'd be frankly fantastic. However, with that being said, I don't know the legal ins and outs of, if they're not agreeable to that and the council still feels that way, how can that work? And that's something I can lean on our city attorney on too. And frankly, I don't have the answer tonight, but
if we were not
you can certainly make that a
rezoning this,
recommendation.
And it was just, it's our
Somebody
lot.
can-
Somebody can come in and fill that lot up to the extent of the setbacks.
Right.
And it would be the same structure that would be filled up with a duplex.
Right.
They could make it a larger property, make it a rental property and have 4 or 5 bedrooms as long as they could accommodate the parking. They wouldn't need any change, would they, to it?
To do what again?
To make it a rental with multiple bedrooms? Can it still be R1?
They could build a single-family home with 4 bedrooms and rent them out, yes.
And there's nothing, I mean, that wouldn't require a zoning,
Nope.
anything, so.
Nope. Then the rental rules would govern, and then we get back to the discussion about how many off-street parking is provided and how many do you need for a rental property versus a single-family owner-occupied unit. And that is different in Waverly.
I find it hard to make it more restrictive than what it is right now. As a commissioner, to say, well, right now you could do all this, but we're gonna make it restrictive so you can't do what the property would allow. So I kind of struggle with that, but I also understand, neighbors and the feelings that way. It's just hard to say, well, you asked for this, but we're gonna make it really restrictive, so you probably won't be able to do what you want to do either.
Well, and then what do we do if somebody wants to tear down their house, rebuild, and move it up closer to the lot? Because the city requirements, so then are we going to tell one of these guys if they want to tear down and rebuild? Sorry, you can't move your house up on your lot
Or
now.
add on to the house.
Or add on to the front side. I mean...
We wouldn't have
I
any
can't-
authority to do that.
We wouldn't have the authority, so
Right.
why would we meddle?
Now,
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it. I'm trying to just tell you what there's a possibility
know.
of doing to, to make it.
Yeah.
I mean, you're exactly right. I mean,
2 years from now, any one of these guys could go out there and put a 30-foot extension off the front of their house, and that is allowed in the zoning today.
That's correct.
So, I mean,
you're the 4 or 5 bedroom house. There's plenty of places for off street parking. I mean, to build it. So you.
I agree with Heidi that it's not right to pick and choose. We don't like you, so we're going to make you do extra. We do like you, so follow the code. There's something wrong about that. And frankly, the discussion regarding, if they want to go in and build a 4-bedroom house turned into a rental, they can certainly do that, because that's probably what's going to happen with a duplex, although I don't know. I'm just assuming. But I think that probably helped me decide that I don't think a change is necessary or reasonable for that neighborhood.
Can we try for a
What do you
motion?
mean by it? What do you mean by a change? Going to R2?
I could leave it R1, that's my opinion.
I don't like the way you read for motion, so.
Well, let's talk about this. The motion that was proposed was that we recommended approval of a rezoning request for this address from R1 to R2 for the area described to the city council. I think the first question is, do we want to put a restriction, a recommended restriction on that? And
I'll just start with the motion. I move that the Commission recommend approval of the rezoning request from R1 to R2.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion. Then I'm going to ask you to do a roll call.
Okay, we'll do it alphabetical. We'll do it reverse alphabetical. Wilson?
No.
Solheim?
No.
Payne?
No.
Olson?
Yes.
Huser?
Yes.
Frankie, never mind. Dane?
No.
Begelman?
No?
Anderson?
Yes.
Okay. 3 yes. 2, 3, 4, 5 no. Motion fails.
Now, for the people that have an interest, city council, this can still go to city council, and the case can be made there. And again, this is a recommending body, so it, but they do pay a lot of attention to the discussion, and that's why we tend to go a little bit further with the people that are here to make sure that they get a good taste of what's going on here.
So,
Okay.
so this will be on the August 17 city council meeting for the first of 3 readings.
Okay, we're going to move to regular business.
And could I just make one request?
Yes, please.
Whenever votes are close like this, and thank goodness today there aren't many absent, the minutes become really important for city council as well. So you always do a great job, and but
I'll try to get
I'll
those
just
out
make that
tomorrow.
comment.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
And a lot of city council members watch the tape or the disc. Yeah, good. Okay, going to item C, regular business, review preliminary plat for High Point Second Edition for 15 residential lots in northeast Waverly. Waverly Real Estate, Inc. applicant is requesting a preliminary subdivision plat for 15 residential lots known as High Point Second Edition. The comprehensive land use map shows these properties as residential. Following review of the preliminary plat, a final plat and construction documents may be brought forward within 12 months for review and recommendation by the Commission. The Leisure Services Commission will review the plat request for parkland in comparison to the open space plan at the August 20, 2015 Leisure Services Commission meeting. Ben, do you have anything on this?
I do not. Hopefully everybody was able to view the plat okay. I have an aerial photograph of the area, a zoning map, and also a future land use plan. Everybody able to view that okay?
Yep.
Okay.
And I've got one question on the Beacon, Bremer County deal.
Yeah.
If we look at the curve on Bremer Road,
Okay.
the triangle there used to be a part of the lot when that was all squared off.
Mm-hmm.
Who owns that property now?
That would be to the northwest property owner, Waverly Real Estate LLC on the northwest side. It originally went with that lot, northwest side of where it bends, and the road actually cut right through that lot.
Right.
And so that still is under ownership of that, and the city more than likely will reach out to the developer and ask them, to discuss the purchase of that or sale of that to the city, so we can do away with that perhaps and do the right-of-way properly and to rework that so that it's not still under their ownership, and that be provided an opportunity for a roadway connection for the preliminary plat under discussion tonight.
Well, it appears that the roadway that connects up with Bremer Road does in fact violate, that's not a good word, but it
Goes right through it.
goes through that property. Thank you.
So that's a discussion that will happen before the final construction documents. So you have before you have preliminary plat showing roughly what they anticipate on engineering and putting together construction documents based off of this.
I think the other,
Yeah, I was going to
Okay.
say. Yeah.
So,
well, it really doesn't make any difference though, because they could sell one and not the other.
so long story short, we are aware of that,
Yeah,
and
good.
the applicant's aware of
That's
that too.
That's
yeah.
perfect. The other piece here is, I think, is that this opens up the second access point. to this development, and that's healthy. Right now, the only one is what, off of Route 3, Bremer, East Bremer?
Yeah.
Yeah. How about questions, comments from the commission on this?
Ben, can you tell me, is this land currently owned by Waverly Real Estate, or is this another one of our let's do it ahead of time and pretend?
Pretty sure they are now the legal owner. Can you confirm that? I see they're in the audience tonight. So they're paying taxes on it, so I assume they own it now. It is under their name when I go under the Beacon site. Yeah. The assessor does show the record of Waverly Real Estate LLC.
Well, my impression on this is you got 15 quality lots that are the appropriate size based on the subdivision that it is north of, as well as to the west of. It fits. It's nice design. He owns it. I'm fully supportive.
And the connectivity thing is
Huge.
nicely done with.
Huge.
Nice layout.
I mean, you're going to move it? I'll second that motion.
I heard a motion.
You heard a
Mr.
motion and a
Dane?
second.
Okay, we have a second. Any other discussion on this? Hearing none, all of those in favor indicate yes.
Yes.
Those opposed, no. And the motion is carried. It'll go to city council. What's the date on that, 17?
Well, that's something too. We have the leisure services looking at on the 20th is their meeting, so it may have to happen after that as soon as we can.
Okay. Okay, item C2.
Just a question. They still, Leisure Services still looks at that because of the park situation, or?
Parkland requirement, they're going to look to see if there's any trail or any amenities proposed to serve the residents in that area. And they are required to represent 5% of the gross area for residential development as parkland. That's a city requirement that we have.
I know, I thought we kind of got rid of some of that in the.
It still exists.
I thought we said that was ridiculous because we have so many parks now you couldn't take care of. That's what came to us.
Well, and that's why they review it, and they can recommend and allow the council to say, vote on it.
About the same thing, because you've got so much detention area. Isn't that, who owns that detention area?
That will be dedicated to the city.
That's what I thought. So I think we set aside enough area already for that development. So I guess that's ultimately up to the leisure services, but you're already setting aside a huge amount of square footage there.
So do we need it?
Yeah, well, we've
I
already
think
voted.
we touched base on the parkland. That's a good topic to bring up now, but that's why it'll go to leisure services one last time. It was originally thought of when this subdivision, this is the second phase, we'll call it. It's high point number 2. With high point number 1, it was discussed, it was reviewed, and they showed the build-out plan. This is following the build-out plan. And again, it technically expires after 1 year, and it's been many years later. So that's why it's coming back once again, just for review. We still on board with this, yes or no, and then we go to the council for final vote.
This might be one of those cases where we should revisit the code and ask among ourselves. Dave's thinking that we, at some point in the past, said, you know, enough of these small little neighborhood parks. Maybe we ought to codify it after thorough discussion.
And that could be something too, where a few commissioners could meet with me and we could go over that and say what improvements could be made to this.
Well, I think we've had that discussion over the years that we've got to quit putting these little parks out there, and the city said that they can't afford to maintain them, and so now you're going to hold up getting the final approval because of these are commission having to review it. So I think we need to take a look at that part of it.
I think the concern is for timing in terms of,
It'll be here for a long time, and I appreciate that sentiment that we want to hurry and rush this through, but I think given some foresight and and looking at the human scale again, how people, when they live in this neighborhood, how they may use the neighborhood and walk in it and drive around in it. Maybe they're missing something, but maybe not. So appreciate the comment, though.
Let me just add one thing. So since it's going to require 3 public hearings, couldn't it still?
It doesn't require 3 public hearings. No. This is the preliminary plat, and so what happens now is it goes leisure services and then straight to council. Once the council is okay with the arrangement and size of lots and everything, then they prepare the final documents, which include engineering everything, establishing costs for streets, certifying those costs with our engineer, and they put up a performance bond so that should anybody fault on it, at least the city could finish the streets if they've started, and the streets are finished, and then the lots will be bought and sold as on the private side. But our concern is the streets, that they at least be put in, infrastructure's in place so that new homes could be built.
Does council have a study session scheduled for August? Do you know?
Yes.
So it could be, would that be something that could be added to that agenda? That would be after the leisure services, and that would at least cut into the time.
And I know I can work that out with the city administrator and the mayor. I know they kind of have some purview over those agendas to see if it warrants it, or if there's going to be a big topic, then they may decide to push it off to the first Monday in September.
Right
or
now,
the next available.
the plan for the 24th, be the 24th
Right.
Study session is to discuss the Green Bridge and financial options, what we have.
This would make a nice respite.
Maybe put this one in the front.
Well, let the mayor and city administrator talk about that. I do know that's what's on the agenda right now for the 24th.
So I'll push this forth I'll certainly try to help the applicants because of this nature and this leisure services component. We'll try to do our best to streamline this as much as we can, but we'll follow the code as it's written.
Okay, let's go to item number C2, review preliminary plat for Cedar Point First Edition for 4 commercial lots in southeast Waverly. GLSW LLC applicant is requesting a preliminary subdivision plat for 4 commercial lots known as Cedar Point First Edition. The property is located on the south side of and within the 3000 block of East Bremer Avenue. The comprehensive land use map was amended recently to show this property as commercial. Following review of the preliminary plat, a final plat and construction documents may be brought forward within 12 months for review and recommendation by the commission. So you've got before you the exhibit.
So looking at the plan here, how are these 3 lots accessed? It looks like there's currently one access point that would be the Pine Street. How do people get to 1, 2, 3?
So what they're proposing is there's an existing, maybe I'm misstating, but is there like a field drive or an existing drive or proposed drive? Maybe the applicant can help me with the topography there.
Pine Street will serve 3 and 4.
So there's actually 4 lots proposed. Pine Street is proposed to continue southbound with an intersection there. It'd be a kind of a 4-way intersection there. And then to the west and the lots 1 and 2 are pending DOT driveway approval that they will share an access drive, similar to 10th Avenue Southwest, where you pull in and then you can access, I think, 2 or 3 properties.
So that second common drive is what that would serve that. There's no frontage.
So it'd be one additional driveway and then one additional street straight south of Pine Street, so it'll line up for better visibility. That's what they're proposing.
Turn lane there now?
I believe there is a middle lane, but if it's not, I'm sure they could work on restriping that perhaps. I'd have to look at the aerial.
For sure.
It's all 3 lane?
Yeah.
Is it 3? Okay. So that was a yes.
So the drawings don't reflect that. I mean, they just have the red part in there, where Pine Street's already approved. Is that right?
Well, it's
On the preliminary plat, it shows that indentation.
there's that little
Right.
box there.
Right. I see that, but it's
Oh, I see. So I believe the red is actually showing from the edge of the pavement the new driveway section. in red, and then the box is going to be the common drive access, meaning they both would have an interest. It functions like an easement of access so that both property owners would have equal rights to that area, even though it's right on the common property line.
So it wouldn't necessarily be a street.
No.
It's more of a driveway.
Right, a commercial driveway with potentially 3 lanes, probably a left turn lane dedicated, a right turn lane dedicated, then one way in perhaps. And I know the geometry of that will be discussed with our city engineer and our public works office to make sure it's big enough, but not too big.
But not a full right-of-way like Pine Street, it's just a driveway.
Correct. It will not be a city-through street, yes.
It would pretty much be like Hibbett's and Farmers Bank.
Yes.
Any other questions, comments?
What type of rules do we have as far as barriers or between like commercial and residential?
When commercial butts up to residential, our visual barrier standard states you shall have a 6-foot tall screen. It shall be plantings or a berm, a 3-foot maximum, and then plants on top of that, so you equal 6 feet, or a fence of 6 feet tall. All 3 are acceptable. We'll see a landscaping plan when they come in for development of what's shown as Lot 1 on the west side there as it butts up to those properties on 30th Street, and we will make sure that they have the visual barrier that they're required to put in prior to allowing a building permit being issued.
That's the work we had done late last year, yeah.
Yep.
Yes, sir.
I was there at the first.
Sir, you've got to come up to the mic.
Me?
You.
I was here last March at the first meeting, and if you remember right, you said send it back to the city. Anyway, the gentleman followed me out and asked me what I would say, if not what it would take not to argue with it. And they said that they would put office buildings in the first row. And I was wondering if they were supposed to get in touch with us so we could all look at it, and they never did. But I'm wondering if they still are planning to do that. That's the only question I have.
I don't know that we know. Yeah.
I don't know that we'd know that.
Well, I can tell you what we have tonight is a preliminary plat showing 4 commercial lots, but it doesn't show any building layout or site plan yet.
No intention.
Correct.
Okay. Yes, sir.
I have a description here, but I can't read it and understand it. But how deep are these lots from the property, or from the highway if you have it, or from the property line?
Approximately 280 feet deep, and they're about 245, 235, and 150 feet wide.
So they're about 1.5 acres apiece.
Well, they are that big. In other words, that would get behind the
It would be behind the first 3 homes on 30th Street.
First
first
three
three
homes.
lots.
That's my
First
question.
3 lots, the first 2 homes, including the undeveloped lot on the farthest north.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right.
So 2 homes down from current development.
That's my question, and thank you very much.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move the planning and zoning recommend approval of the preliminary plat, creating 4 commercial lots on the property described to the city council.
I'll second it.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Those in favor, say yes.
Yes.
Those opposed, no. And the motion is unanimously carried. Under old business, do we have any old business? I think the one item would be that at the September meeting, we'd like to have some preliminary feedback from the corridor team, so that we can begin some discussion on that. Is there anything else that we might have? Okay. Is there any new business? Hearing none. Barb, it's your turn.
We're adjourned?
We are now.
That was the least forceful statement of the night.